Hey, Frank and Angie, retire early lifestyle, way before retirement age, on much less than you can imagine. And that means we've traveled all of the United States with small children in a travel trailer. We lived the homesteader's lifestyle in the USA, and then we traveled the world, all much earlier than standard retirement ages.
Looks like we're doing Mexican food in Mexico. We've got some fajita meat over here. We have some beans, tortilla chips, some homemade salsa. Let's see what's in here. Look at that. Fajitas. But some people might call these tacos. Tacos, fajitas, it's all the same, isn't it, hon?
Nope, that's why they got different names.
Okay. All right, then.
People still want to go abroad. It's exciting. There's an adventure aspect. And I run into a lot of people that want to go abroad, since we've been abroad for 11 years. And frequently I'll have people want to consult with me and ask me what to do about their money. I have made some videos about how in different places, well, Mexico is one of them, there were situations where the expats sold their house, and this also happened in Ecuador, where they had sold their house, ended up with a chunk of capital. And it's really alluring to think that you can just sell your house and put your money in one of these banks like in Ecuador or Mexico. And a while back ago, there was a different guy over 10 years ago pushing Dominican Republic. Well, the CD rates were the issue. They were like 9-10% or more. So it's pretty easy to do the simple math and see that by just selling your average house in USA and putting it in you're doing an arbitrage. People do an arbitrage where they're putting their money in a high CD country and yet with low cost of living country is a prescription for, hey, guess what? I don't have to work. I can live off my money. Unfortunately, though, for some of these people, they ended up losing all of their investment, and I do mean all of it. They had, according to Ecuadorian law, they were protected up to $25,000, but of course, when you put much more than that, and then that's what you get back, that could be like 10% of what you started out with. And so it goes that people aren't broke necessarily, but after going abroad, they get broke. And there's other ways to get broke. And so to my mind, it seems to me that the skill of living well as a local, it's a skill that a lot of people don't think they will ever have to need, or, I don't need to do that. I can just sell my house, put it in this CD. And there's other things that happen. There was a guy in the Dominican Republic a dozen years ago that was talking about 9 and 10% CDs, but that only lasted once a bunch of money flows in. You got to understand, they pay those rates because they need deposits. But once you advertise it globally, which is what the internet is, and all this capital flows in, guess what? Supply and demand kicks in. There's more capital than projects. Rates start going down. So that's another way that you might not be able to depend on something like that. The other thing is, there's so many countries, especially after 2020, that want to pull the little dictatorship thing where they freeze everybody's bank accounts. And Ecuador president has been talking about wanting to do that. Imagine that. And I'll tell you, yeah, the locals will tell you, when we talk to locals, they're like, don't bring your money here. So imagine that, the locals themselves telling you, but hey, if you're not doing anything that resembles going local, that means you're talking to locals. If you're just talking to expats, you would never hear such a thing. That reminds me, I did a consultation with a guy for like almost an hour just explaining all the pitfalls of bringing their money, and that the locals themselves are discouraging people from bringing their money and to their country, which is a huge eye-opener. But of course, we've done things like nomad around Europe for $1,400 a month, which is less than, but not much, because we are smart frugal, less than what it was costing us to live in USA, but that was with ownership of property. So it was a little less, but it was only two of us. So really, if it was only two of us in USA, I would say it's probably about the same. But of course, nomading around Europe could be a lot more fun than staying in one place. But that depends. That depends on if you set up your life to never need a vacation. Therefore, your lifestyle is the type of life you would be living when on vacation, which is a huge thing that a lot of people don't take seriously. And that's what we had, was a house with the pool, walking distance to a lake where we went sailing all the time. But I'm not bragging, just to say that if something happens to you, you can still do so much more than you think you can. It's important to consider who you're listening to, because if, you know, like us, we can live anywhere on the globe, and we have the skills, which people in the membership area are supported in this endeavor, to go local and do it in such a way where you're successful most of the time. Is there a perfection? No. But is it near perfection? Yes. Does it facilitate doing things you didn't think could be done? Absolutely, like nomading around Europe. Because it takes away the idea that you have to go to a specific spot if you've got only this amount of money or what have you. And I'm telling you that outside of Western countries, it's routine to be able to live on amounts that, like, you know, Social Security check amounts. But that, again, that's what the locals do. And yet we were in Western Europe, even within high-cost countries, is what I'm getting ready to tell you here. Even within those countries, there are areas within those countries that are lower cost of living. There's high cost of living and low cost of living even within foreign countries. Now, you need to do your homework, because in the low cost of living areas, you need to understand why that's the case. You do have to be careful if you want to go out outside of the USA. Again, you have to understand the exact reason. If you're looking for a low cost of living within a high cost of living, like you could go to Portugal, and there's a crisis going on that is, I will reserve comment on, because we've made other videos about it. And that crisis mode actually rears its ugly head so many times, especially on the retire abroad media and magazine circuit. Well, what do you know? Surprise, surprise. Wouldn't have known it. And therefore, all of the ways of figuring out what's really going on before it happens, because once it breaks the news, everybody knows it. But by then it's too late. You don't really want to be chased out of town like the Americans are, especially the Californians are in Lisbon right now, practically being chased out of town. I mean, almost literally, just people protesting in the streets saying, go home. You know, what's the next step? Coming to your door?
They're saying Americans and Californians go home.
Yeah, so you want to understand these things before the crowds, and that's the whole idea, is to be, somebody said in the comments, Frank, you're just ahead. What did he say? You're
ahead of the pack.
You're ahead of the pack. Sometimes we are so far ahead of the pack that people don't understand you, and they shrug and don't think you're telling them anything. And then, you know, much later, they're like, wait a minute, that guy was saying this. And
we used to call it the contrarian way of doing things when you go and travel abroad.
I'm very much contrarian in the choices I tend to make. Contrarian just because, not contrarian for contrarian's sake, but just because when you look at all your options and you realize that the way everybody's doing it is about the worst way of doing it, not that there aren't any benefits at all for some people, but, you know, generally speaking. So anyway, I wouldn't worry too much about being flat broke if you understand what that really means to be able to do things. It's like our food bill is the same. It's like we're in Italy and our food bill's the same. We're in America, our food bill's the same. We're in Ecuador, our food bill's the same.
How can that be?
I mean, generally speaking, nowadays you're seeing all these videos, eat for $10 a week, and I mean,
oh, God.
you can do that if you're one person. We've always been 4 or 5 adults, and so big difference there. And two, you do get economies of scale, and when you're stationary, you can stock up when the price is low on sale, and you buy 6 months worth. We've done things like that in USA, you know. And yet there are ways kind of do things that way in a small way, even when you are traveling or go abroad. Like I just made a video about preparing in an apartment. Well, preparing in an apartment is similar to preparing when you're stationary. It's just that you don't buy as much food, but you're still buying things in a very smart way so that your cost of living, no matter where you go, is about the same. And the things that normally vary to a high degree that kind of throws a monkey wrench into that is the rents. And in Mexico, the rents are much higher than a lot of places we've been all over the globe. We've been all over. Now, Panama's bad, but Mexico we're finding is almost as bad. And but we've been to Europe and have been able to find we had a €300 apartment with an ocean view, which was amazing. And it's like we come to the beach and it costs us $2 in gas. We bring overnight oats and it's like $1 a piece or less. So for $4 we come and spend the day at the beach. Whereas perhaps I know back in the day we were a 7-hour drive from the beach, and so you had all that gas. Then you had to rent vacation beach rental, and all those costs make it so that you end up doing those things as if you were going on a vacation because of the cost involved and the time that it takes and all that. And so the key here is to arrange your life in such a way to live so that you don't need to vacate from that life. You're already, quote unquote, vacated from a life you wouldn't want to have to vacate from. And that's the whole key. And it is a lot easier for people to do it by going abroad. That's a huge pull of going abroad. I realize that. But I've always said for all these years that how you do things does matter. And we've talked about that on this channel so much that I kind of wonder whether we're just way ahead of the pack all this time. And of course, you've got to realize that human nature is such that most people will take the easy path. And if that means, hey, I can just pack my bags and go to this town here, that's all I'll have to do. And if it's presented that way, then that's the easy path people will take. But you see where that leads this day and age. Lisbon, Portugal, case in point, hint, hint. You see where that leads, right? Well, you see it now because it's happening. And so to be able to see those things before they happen and to be able to understand those things before they happen and to be able to avoid those things before they happen. So in all things, you can be diligent as we're called to be, diligent in all things, and therefore God gives us our heart's desire. And knowing God's desire for us during this 2020, God's will for each one of our lives is going to be different, and therefore, based on what's happening in the world, we really need to be searching out what God's will is for our lives. And so we talk a lot about money because that's what the popular thing is to do on YouTube, but foundationally to that conversation, of course, comes down to that aspect of it and realizing, well, what exactly should we be doing at this time? All right, and so we're in the middle of summer here in Mexico, enjoying the beach and asking ourselves what the next step is. All right, thanks for clicking on the video. Hope you got something out of that. Have a nice day.